I'm your host, Lori Crever. Today, we're very excited to have with us Jane Yolen, who is a distinguished author of more than 200 books. Welcome to the show, Jane.
Glad to be here.
Let's talk about the book you have with you today, Gray Heroes, and it's a book of elder folk tales.
When did elderly change? I mean, we have John Glenn going up, orbiting
yeah.
the Earth. We have Jacques Cousteau going under the sea. We have that wonderful climbing granny who climbed mountains when she was like 95 years old. And someone once recently defined old age as 15 years older than I am now.
Is that the definition that you're using?
Absolutely. And I'm sure when I get to be 75, it'll be 15 years older than I am then. And one of my friends had a mother who, when she turned 105, said, "I cannot believe I have an 80-year-old son." I think that, well, I guess that would give me pause too if I had an 80-year-old son.
Yeah.
But it isn't that she was thinking how old she was. She was thinking of how old he was.
Yeah, that's 80. That's really old. She's thinking at age 105.
That's right, because she didn't feel 105. And we go past the mirror and we look at it, and I'm constantly sort of amazed at who that person is, because I don't feel that I am that person. I'm still 32 maybe, 42 maybe. I'm certainly not 60 inside. So I don't know whether the way I feel now about how old I am has to do with the fact that I'm not like my grandmother. I'm more active than my grandmother. And then I remember my grandmother at 80 was going to the USO and dancing with the boys.
Oh.
So maybe she was more active than I was.
Yeah. Wow. If you're just tuning in right now, this is 30 Minutes with the Author. We're talking with Jane Yolen, who has a book called Gray Heroes, Elder Tales from Around the World. And we're visiting with her at the Mounds View Public Library. Now, I noticed that you have actually written in a number of different genres. You were the president of the Science Fiction Writers of America?
That's right. That's right.
Can we talk about that for a moment? That's so intriguing.
Well, I was the second girl in the Boys Club.
I guess.
To run it. I've once told someone that I had written in every genre except hard science, cookbooks, and sports. And I have a book coming out this spring called Moonball, and it's about a little boy who plays baseball. So I suppose now I've written in every genre except hard science and cookbooks.
And the cookbooks.
So I don't write me off. I just like writing.
Yes.
I'm good at it and I enjoy it.
Now let's talk about too talking about fairy tales, and a typical audience for that is children. I'm thinking you had a very interesting growing up experience. You were born and raised in New York City with two writers as parents, correct?
Well, my father was a journalist, and my mother really was a failed writer. She only sold one short story in her life, but she made crossword puzzles and double cross sticks. So my memory of her, one of my keen memories of her, is sitting there with a grid on her lap, working on creating crossword puzzles. So words, I guess, I could say we were really a very wordy family. And my brother is a journalist in Brazil.
Yes. Wow. So what was that like for you? Were you taken to museums and plays and ballet and...
You can't be in New York and not do that. We lived 10, 15 blocks from the Museum of Natural History, and my brother and I haunted the place. I mean, we got to know every inch of the big blue whale. But growing up with two writers as parents meant that most of their friends were writers too. So I had this assumption that when you grow up, you are a writer, that all adults are writers, that maybe they're also librarians and teachers and doctors and men who sell newspapers on the corner and butchers. I mean, I had met those people certainly, but that they went home every night and wrote, I was sure. Because every one of my parents' friends who came to dinner, or who came over for drinks, whose houses we visited, they were all writers. Now, of course, I was about 8 or 9 when I realized that wasn't true, but I think I was kind of, at that point, I was set in what I was going to do.
Yes. And when you started out in your career, was it in education?
No, I started out as a journalist, a very bad journalist.
And why was that?
Because I couldn't.
There was no fantasy in it? You couldn't embellish?
No, I did embellish. That was the problem. I found myself incapable of going up to someone and saying to them, I see your son has just died. How do you feel?
Yeah.
You know, that was just nothing I could do.
Yeah.
And the first big story that I was sent out on, this will show you how old I was, Khrushchev had just come to power. And I was sent out to ask the man on the street how they felt about Khrushchev. So this was for the Bridgeport, Connecticut Sunday Herald. And I went out, I put my hair up in a bun, and I put on lipstick and little heels, because I looked about 12 years old. And I went to the train station where I thought I'd find the most men on the street. And I stopped one man and I said, excuse me, sir, but I'm a reporter with the Bridgeport Sunday Herald, and we'd like to ask you a question. And he looked at me and he said, okay, girlie, what's your game? I said, I beg your pardon. He said, what do you really want? And I said, oh, I just wanted to ask you. And he went on. So then a priest came towards me, and I thought, oh, well, I'll ask him. He'll be nice to me. Yeah. And he patted me on the head and he said, dear, this is obviously not what you should be doing. So I went to my aunt's house, and my aunt and all my cousins, who had different last names than I did, I interviewed them. And they said, we don't care what you say as long as we sound intelligent. And I made up the story. So it was clear I was not to be a journalist at that moment.
So how did you transition then into
Well, I stayed there for a while, and then after college I went to and worked at This Week magazine, and then I worked at Saturday Review for a while, and then I worked for gold medal paperback books, and I was already selling poetry and articles and that sort of thing on my own. And then I sold a children's book by accident, really, not by design, and decided that's what I really like to do best of all. So then I also became an editor in children's books for a while.
Yes. Well, what do you think when it comes to children's book? There's so many. What do you define as a good children's book? What should really be the purpose?
To delight, to tell a story. I mean, I think books with a purpose are almost invariably bad books. You know, preaching and teaching those dear little minds is a very bad way to write a children's book. But what I do is I write a book for the child in me, the one who devoured books. And if I satisfy that child, then I'll find other children who like the same kind of thing. It's the only way I know how to write. I don't write for any specific child except for the one inside of me.
And I think that's served you quite well. Tell me about the storyteller hat that you wear. I know you ran a writer's workshop for a while, every month, for some years.
For about 20 years, yeah.
Do you do regular storytelling presentations for audiences?
Oh,
who are those audiences?
I just did one at the Minneapolis Science Fiction Convention.
Which was?
Just
this weekend, yeah.
The Easter weekend. They call it Milk and Cookies with Auntie Jane. And some of them actually come in their jammies with their bears. And I had a variety. I had children and adults. I told stories for about an hour. This time I had a particularly wonderful group of kids who would not let me get away with anything. And in fact, at one point I was telling a story that came from Scotland, and there's a patterning part of it where I would say, and these were really questions I was not expecting anyone to answer, I would say, and you know how it is when you eat and you drink and you drink and you eat and you eat and you drink and you drink and you eat. And then I would answer, your head gets tired and you fall into your soup. But this one little kid says, you have to go to the bathroom. At which point we all laughed. So when you're storytelling, unlike when you're book writing, you have to be ready to sort of backtrack and sidetrack and get around and incorporate what somebody says in the audience into the story as you go.
I guess.
It's a little scarier in some ways than writing, where you can take all the time you want to revise. Nobody else is sort of sticking their little
2 cents, as it were.
Yes.
Have you done acting as well?
Radio acting.
Yes.
Yeah. I love it.
That sounds terrific.
Yeah.
And what is the next project that you have on your front burner? Or do you kind of have a few balls in the air at once right now with your different books and projects?
To use a different metaphor, I say that there are some writers who ride one horse to the end. There are others who manage a matched pair. There are some who can hook 3 horses together and drive a troika. And I am a mule train driver, and I sort of hitch up 24 of those little suckers, and if one dies on the way, I just cut it out of the traces and go on. So I'm usually working on 8, 10, 12 things at the same time. Front burner, 2 projects with my daughter.
Right, the mother-daughter
The mother-daughter folktales, and also mother-daughter poems for children called Dear Mother, Dear Daughter, in which, for example, she wrote a poem that I can't remember the exact poem, but the tenor of the poem was, you know, Dear Mama, please don't bother me. I will get my homework done. Why are you always bothering me? You know and my poem goes, I'm tired of being the homework policeman.
Right.
And so it's those kinds of issues.
Like a point, counterpoint
exactly,
type thing.
Exactly. So those are 2 projects. I am revising a young adult novel about Mary Queen of Scots, a historical novel, because I found out that Mary Queen of Scots had 3 female jesters. I mean, actually, had 3 female jesters. And the minute a novelist hears that, all those little antennae go up, and you have to write about it.
Right.
So,
like you say, the story that needs to be told, that's what you're looking for.
That's right. And so this one is called The Queen's Own Fool, and it'll be out next year, if I get the revisions in. I've just finished the 2nd book in a new series that I've started called Tartan Magic, about an American family that goes for the summer to Scotland, and the children all get involved in magical happenings. So the first book, which is out this spring, is called The Wizard's Map, and the 2nd book is called The Pictish Child. And I'm working on a book that I call my rock and troll novel. It's about a troll and his friend the Puka who want to go to hear Boots and the 7 Leaguers, who are the big rock and troll group who are playing. And you know, it's an adventure story. What else am I doing? I'm working on a couple of poetry books with my son, the photographer, and a music book with my son, the musician, who lives in Minneapolis.
Right, because you do lyrics also.
Yes, but these are not songs we've written. It's going to be American history through folk song.
Oh, that sounds great.
So, unfortunately, that means that there are a lot of war songs.
Yeah.
Because if you want to hit the high points in American history, you hit the Revolutionary War, and you hit the War of 1812, and the Civil War, and the Spanish-American one. It just goes on and on.
Right, and that those were really used to sort of stitch the community and the people together.
Yeah.
And get them to rally for a cause.
So we're working on that now. So is that enough?
I would say, my gosh.
So don't give me any ideas, because I have plenty.
I won't. Well, it appears that you are something of a hero yourself, just like the folks that you talk about in the book.
Well, maybe not. I don't go out and kick dragons around.
Not yet.
Not
you still
yet.
have a lot of time.
That's right. Cookbooks first, and then dragons.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You've been with us here at the Mounds View Public Library. We've been talking to Jane Yolen about Gray Heroes, Elder Tales from Around the World. I'm Lori Crever, signing off on 30 Minutes with the Author, encouraging you to read a book. It could change your life. And let's encourage our children to do the same. Goodbye.